Radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Well. Good evening. How you doing? You miss me? Yeah, it's Fade to Black. Today is Monday, November 17th, 2025. Let's do this, man. Yeah, I'm your host, Jimmy Church. A couple of things before we get started tonight. We took last week off. I had to go and tape more episodes of Beyond Belief. And so while I was gone, the storms rolled in here to LA, started raining. And I got back at the end of the week. Rain constantly. It rained all weekend. It's raining today. Today is Monday. So I'm having Harley withdrawal. There's that part. The other part is a couple of things. One, I don't know for sure. I haven't checked, but if I was a betting man, I'm sure that we've gotten around a foot of rain and it's not an exaggeration, in the last 7 days. We always need rain out here. I live in the Mojave Desert. It doesn't rain often. Rains maybe once in the summer and then a few times during the winter. Now, and here's the other part. It's cold. And normally when it does this in the winter, the mountains around me are covered in snow. We have Big Bear and skiing and Snow Summit and all of that. That's just a half hour away. And it's not cold enough to turn this into snow. So everything is just rain and flooding, and it's crazy, but we can never have enough rain here. We can never have enough water. So we love it. But we don't get it often. And, everything clogs up, the drains and streets flood, and we have all of that. No power outages, no internet issues, nothing like that. Just staying in the house, cozy and warm, and watching a lot of television. So there you go. Here we go. Kicking off another brand new week here on Fade to Black, and it's a great week. Tonight, Callum Cooper joins us live from the United Kingdom. We're talking about ghost, hauntings, and survival. Tomorrow night, Nicola Farmer joins us, finally. We're going to be talking about the ICU Academy, all of that tomorrow night. Wednesday night, Masadi is back with us. We're going to be talking about the NDE, the near-death experience, a complete reveal on the subject. And then Thursday night, another huge night, everything is big this week. Julia Mossbridge is back, Dr. Julia Mossbridge. She's got a new book out on disclosure. And, we talk about neuroscience with her and parapsychology and the quantum world and how that affects everything. But to have her, she's such a big brain, to have a book out on disclosure and the process of disclosure for all of us, and how to deal with it. And that's what we're going to do on Thursday night with Julia Mossbridge. So we have just an absolute huge week on Fade to Black. Now, my next event coming up is the Conscious Life Expo. That is February 20th through the 23rd, 2026 at the LAX Hilton. Tickets are available now over at consciouslifeexpo.com. The links for that are below in the description. Of course, over on our website and throughout social media. You know what to do. All right, let's get started. Very excited about the show tonight. Callum Cooper is here live from the UK. And before he even comes on, thank you, Callum, for doing this. I know what time it is over there. It's so cool that you do that for us. But we're going to be talking about parapsychology tonight. His research into ghosts and hauntings. And of course, I mentioned survival. And his work on phone calls from the dead. That's right. We're going to do all of that and much more. He's a professor of all of this. We're going to talk about what he does over at the University of Northampton and what is parapsychology in universities. He is a professor. How is it taught? What is the science behind it? We're going to do all of that because he is a professor of parapsychology and public understanding of human science at California Institute for Human Science and associate professor of psychology at the University of Northampton. His links are below. I would like to welcome for the first time to Faded Black, Callum Cooper. Callum, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm good, Jimmy. How are you?
Man, it's so good to have you here. And you get the first time guest disclaimer. I thought you and I had met. It was so funny. We were talking about this before the show as I was welcoming you back. And then I just realized that I'm getting too old for this, man. But welcome. And you get the first time guest disclaimer, which is Callum. It's you and I just sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. Where the conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends, it ends. But we'll end as friends. There you go. But you have to accept so we can move on.
I accept.
Yeah, very good. Very good. That was too easy. Okay. So many ways to start this conversation tonight. And parapsychology itself is a very broad umbrella. It's big. And it's also something that I think is a misused term. People say it all the time and may not really understand, but they think it applies to their situation. And that's how big this subject has gotten. So let's actually start there for you. What is your definition of parapsychology?
I don't have one personally, but the one that we keep gravitating towards whenever we do classes is outlined by Harvey J. Owen and Caroline Watt. So they did the 5th edition together of an introduction to parapsychology. And that is, parapsychology is a science which looks at unusual human experiences and or abilities which in principle seem to be outside of the realms of conventional scientific paradigms. So what science currently understands. So we're aware of the experience or the ability. And when we look at conventional explanations, in some instances of those things, a ghost, things moving seemingly as they're of their own accord, there doesn't seem to be a conventional explanation. So that's how I define that science.
Okay, let's narrow that down a bit if we can. You said your own abilities. What does that entail? What does that mean?
So some people might profess the ability to influence things with their mind. So move things, turn lights on and off, or interact in a way with computer systems with just their mind, or affect biological systems. So influence people from behind, like staring detection. You can stare at the back of someone's body or head and they start to fidget and they turn around and notice your glare as though your stare was having that influence on them. A famous person for all of this was Nina Kulagina, or Kulagina, who could move wood and plastic and metal and deflect compass needles, but also reports of her stopping frog hearts, which is what eventually led to all the stories behind the Men Who Stare at Goats and the remote viewing projects. Other abilities people could report might be seeing future events before they happen accurately, maybe in dreams, all the way through to mediumship. So people professing that they can either channel the dead or in seance type phenomena, that there would be a movement of objects around the room. So things like that.
You say things like that, but back to what I had mentioned earlier, it's a broad scope, isn't it?
Yeah, that's specific abilities. I mean, the more common stuff are just day-to-day experiences. It's rarer to get someone that professes an ability than it is when it comes to day-to-day phenomena, which we call spontaneous phenomena. And that could be telephone telepathy, people are being aware of when you think of a friend or a relative that you haven't spoken to in a long time, then ring, ding, ping, email alert, it's them. Before you even, get to the phone or the email, it's them, and yet you were thinking of them and it wasn't a regular occurrence. You could suddenly see an apparition. It might be during bereavement. It might not be. You could suddenly have a knowing about something at a distant location before coming into contact with it. All these certain things, they're very, very common spontaneous experiences, and particularly stuff surrounding death as well, where sometimes it's bereavement related, sometimes it isn't.
Why do so many people ignore the phone call that they haven't gotten in 5 years after they think of somebody, right? It's just a coincidence. It's not. It's so strange, but so many just dismiss it as just normal.
I think we hear these stories so often. It's interesting when people say, it's just one of those things. Well, yeah, it is. But what's the mechanism? Is it just pure coincidence, which is interesting? Human ability to accurately appraise coincidence or not is interesting for what we call anomalistic psychology. So that's we have three strands. We've got anomalistic psychology, parapsychology, and clinical parapsychology. If we're looking at anomalistic psychology, we're interested in all the aspects of psychology that we're aware of that seem to produce what could be a paranormal experience, a strange experience, but there's a mechanism we know behind it. Then parapsychology is aware of that, but wants to know what's left. It's like panning for gold. So we're aware of all the dirt, but the gold nuggets are great and they don't make sense. They're not dirt. So what are they? What's going on there? Parapsychology wants to know what's left. And clinical parapsychology takes all of that as read and says we're not challenging the experience. You say you've seen a ghost or you've had a vision of something before it's happened. How's it affected you? What's the well-being aspect? How's it changed your worldview? How has it changed your outlook on life? How do you feel following that experience? What did it mean to you? Why does it matter? So with the anomalistic side of things, we could look into things like when people say, oh my goodness, I've just met you and I didn't realize we had the same birthday. That's incredible. What are the chances of that? And people think, well, you need at least, half as many people as there are days in the year, or maybe one for every day in the year. Actually, you need about 22, 23 people in a room.
22, 1 in 22. Yeah.
And by those statistics, 2 people will share the same birthday. So sometimes what we think are really large, statistics are actually a lot smaller than we think. And so, again, the amount of times we think about someone that, we would be in contact with, but not on a regular basis, at some point you or them are going to reach out. So it might seem strange when actually it's not so strange, because we have to look at when is that kind of going to come around again. So we could weigh up those experiences and look at many to see what does seem to have a conventional explanation and what doesn't.
It has gotten so commonplace with me when somebody's name pops in my head, I'll look down at my phone and watch it ring. Right? It's like that. But so I started an experiment about 4 years ago, and it hasn't panned out. And this is the experiment. I am a French press guy for my coffee. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm a big coffee drinker. Okay. I'm a big coffee drinker. Every morning I make my French press and grind my beans and make an espresso to pour into it. All right. The person who introduced me to the French press in 1987, I don't know how old you are, but I don't know if you were born. Okay. So in 1987, the person and her father, right? Okay. So this is the experiment. You might find this enjoyable.
Go on.
Every day that I make and prep my French press, I say her name. Okay. Mm-hmm. Just put it out there. I'm in a fun mood, and I do it every single day that I make my French press. I say her name and hoping that she'll reach out.
Yeah.
Hasn't happened. It's really weird. And so there's got to be a way to test this. I know this isn't some, set up sterile laboratory type of thing to observe and measure and figure this out. But this person lives on the East Coast. Okay. And it's not like she's nearby. So it is a pretty solid, but nothing in 4 years. And I believe in this. Mm-hmm. Do you think she's getting the message? Right. And just being lazy with the email or the phone call? You know what I mean?
Have you ever asked her what she's doing at the time that you're making the coffee, just in case she's had some interesting coincidence, or she's mentioned your name or looked at a photo of you at the same time. Of course, the thing is, if you mention the routine and the time that you're doing it, then she'll be very conscious of it from that point on.
Right. Yes. And thank you for the advice on that. I've thought about that a lot. Do I reach out now? And does that kill the experiment?
That will ruin it.
Yeah. So, I've thought about this a lot. I totally agree. Now, when she will reach out eventually, right? I will ask her that. Have you been thinking about me? Yeah, every day at 8 a.m. Right? I don't know. But I just thought that I would try this. So it's my own little thing. If it pans out, I'll let you know.
It's like the whole thing of premonitions. If you have ones of usually a premonition comes about as something really boring and mundane. But if it's like what we see in the movies, like Final Destination and things like that, if you were to actually have something so accurate that you knew how to go about intervening and stopping it, and you do stop it, then there's no premonition. Because if you stop the disaster, then it hasn't panned out.
You know what? I started a thought experiment with myself. Now I'm going to share it with you and our audience. Okay. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
This is my dark mind. This is where it goes. So the other night I was in the dark thinking about the universe, right? Just whatever. And this thought popped in my head. So I will ask you. I answered it myself. We'll get to that. If you knew the rest of your life forward and how it ends, would you change anything?
If I already knew.
Yep. And how it ends, do you change anything?
I like the mystery. I don't want to know. I don't want to know what's happening tomorrow.
That's not the question.
Yeah. Well, I'd have a lot of intervening to do. If I already know the rest of my life, I'd be spending all my time stopping that sequence of events. So I'd have no choice but to just go with it, because it's a lot. If it was just a few events that I could change, then definitely I'd change them, because I would want to not know. I'm going to have to, in that scenario, I'm going to have to let it happen, aren't I?
Otherwise, yeah, you're going to have to let it happen. What about the ending? What about the ending?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? The ending could be something embarrassing, right? You know, you choked on your 10th chocolate bar. They find all the wrappers on the floor. Oh my God, he ate himself to death. It could be something. Do you intervene on that, or do you just let that go too?
No, I either want to go peacefully or out in some fantastic way. Just something that's very memorable. That's an incredible way to go. I want that or peace. I don't want anything in between.
So I answered this question myself, honestly, because I was alone. So you're honest with yourself. Just let it go. If I know, well, okay. I don't think you want to mess with the order of things, and if you mess with the order of things, it could influence other people's lives. So and you don't want that. So, okay, you find out, but just let it go.
I used it as an undergraduate. Well, I did a module called Consciousness Studies, and I was with that very guy today. He still works for the University of Northampton, so he taught me as an undergraduate. Now he's a long-time colleague, and I'm very, very skeptical of parapsychology. But I always thought, when we had classes discussing the difference between free will and physically determined events, and which do we have? Do we have free will, or are things all physically determined for us? I would always throw the spanner in the works of, but what about premonitions that people have? That's the third element, because, we have this tricky thing that certain elements of our lives seem to be events that, have important impact on our survival if they're disasters that we see them beforehand. And to what extent do we have free will to intervene? Or are those not only physically determined, but we can see ahead of time what is going to happen as well? And so that created some really interesting debate as an undergraduate. I thought that was a very interesting aspect of consciousness studies.
Yeah, and what's your take on that? When I listen to and talk to physicists and people of the hard sciences, and two things always inevitably come up: consciousness and free will. I want everybody's take on it. It's amazing how physicists and hard scientists and people that deal with the world of quantum and math are absolutely, at least outwardly, publicly, steadfast in there's no such thing as free will. That the only part of free will that's real is you think you have it. So you have the warmth of making a decision, but you didn't make that decision. It's like bizarre. Why? What's your take on free will? Do we have it?
I'm not sure if I've got a hard and fast take on it, but I've heard that notion a number of times, and I quite like it, especially in today's society that we live in. Everything is tracked, monitored. How you pay your bills and the way that you've got to go about life to make a living and make sure the electricity's on, the heating's on, and things. Everything, you're stuck in a system. And you could break that system, but it's not going to go well for you. But you can also predict what's going to happen because of physically determined events that are set in place to make sure that if you don't follow your set routine of going to work, if you don't follow your set routine of paying the bills and, seeing the people you need to and looking after the people that you need to and turning up for meetings, you pretty much know where that's going to go. So you have to go with the flow and you have to get things done in a positive way, and you have to be a good citizen and do your job and turn up on time and do this and do that and do the other. And so I completely buy the notion that it's an illusion that, yeah, sure, you can do whatever you like. You can intervene at any time. You can, but then you know where it's going as well. So it's far better to just go with the flow and let the events take you on this journey.
Yeah. God, that's so depressing.
It's very
depressing. And this is where I'm in the middle. Let me tell you why I'm in the middle. My audience right now, I could do an instant poll, right? And go, okay, do we have free will? Yes or no? In fact, I'll ask the chat room right now. Do we have free will? Yes or no? All right. It's a straight, there's no gray area there. And so I want to believe that I have free will, that I can choose my own destiny. And then I think about the universe, and I think about particles. I think about the quantum world and how things combine and how we got here. That is all in order of gravity, math, equations, and everything else. And it's going to continue to play out the way that it's going to play out. Inside of that are us. We are made up of those same particles, right? And they are going to do their thing. I want a chocolate shake instead of a vanilla shake. I make the decision at that moment. And I feel like I just made the decision to have a nice, delicious, ice cold chocolate creamy shake, right? I was going to make that choice anyway. The universe is playing out its particle dance. And it really bums me out. So I don't know. I think I'm just going to go on faith.
Well, there was a few of that in the chat. I saw the chat and it was like 60% yes for free will, and some people saying that it was a God-given thing as well. So there's a faith aspect for a lot of people as well. Going back to consciousness studies again about the free will to do things, I always thought of the hand analogy and things like that in terms of, for me to do this, wiggle my fingers on my right hand and my thumb. The interesting thing is that to give this demonstration of me doing this, my brain, a split second or so before it's actually happened, has decided to do it. Even the thought that I was going to do that as a demonstration for you happened in my mind before it became a physical thing. So the brain is making decisions before the actual conscious thought and the act comes out as well, which always baffled me, that there's this lag between a decision to do something and then the thought and it actually happening.
Yeah. The thought of I'm going to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything is already put into motion. It's nanoseconds, right? It's very quick, but it is certainly before you think, okay, yeah, I'm going to do that. Your brain's already planned on doing it.
And that was the other argument. So another predeterminism aspect, or is it free will?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right. I want to discuss parapsychology, but I like where this conversation is going. Determined, materialistic, determined thought processes also depress me. I there's something too close to being a miracle, or just absolutely impossible when we talk about us and how these particles, we start off with, sperm and an egg, and then suddenly we're having a discussion about chocolate shakes. That's mind-blowing to me. And to think that we are given this ability just because the world of quantum figured out a way to get this done. I don't know. I think that there is something much more deeper and conscious driven out there in the universe that has much more meaning to just chemistry. What's your take?
I'm not really sure where to take that, really. I wasn't expecting questions about this.
I know. Well, you started it.
Well, I'm no biologist or anything like that. I mean, you mentioned the hard sciences earlier in relation to all of these things as well, and what the hard scientists think. And I've had this discussion a number of times with fellow psychologists that we consider psychology the hard science. By no means is it easy. And parapsychology has had the problem in the media where people will argue the idea that it's got a replication problem, that's one of the major flaws of the science. And it isn't. From my experience of it, and if you look at the literature, it's got pretty good replication when you look at it when it comes to lab studies of psychic abilities. And yet you look at more general psychology, and in the replication crisis, when places like the American Psychological Association and the British Psychological Society went and looked at some of the most popular psychology studies, about 30% of them seemed to be replicable, and the rest weren't. And yet these were things that were very mundane psychological aspects that we take as read when it comes to those findings, and actually they're not as fixed in place as we think. And we turn to the hard sciences, as they're called, and they're not juggling all these issues of the fact that you're dealing with studying people, and day to day your emotions and feelings change, how the lab's set up, the rapport that you've got with the experimenter, the kind of task that you're being asked to do. We're like trying to nail jelly or jello to the wall. It's really difficult to keep human behavior in one place and contained. So, just studying psychology is one of those difficult things of trying to get your head around. How do we actually do this? And how do we get good methodology and consistent results? So then you start to bring biology and physical determinism and free will and all these other aspects into play. We are dealing with a very complex science when it comes to psychology, and especially lab studies of things and psychic phenomena as well. So yeah,
it's fascinating to me. One general aspect, parapsychology, even here in the United States, it took a minute of very hard work just to get the first university class and to get recognition into it. It's just really weird how academia doesn't want to, and I don't know the reasons for it. They have stated so many for this roadblock to parapsychology and the science of it. But yet, and here's the rub, but yet a physicist will tell you can observe a particle and change its state just by looking at it. Now, you're going to tell me that, but you don't want to take parapsychology seriously. Isn't that in of itself a paradox?
I find it strange how with things like astrophysics and things like that they're quite accepting of the idea of multiverse. And I like the idea of multiverse, but I find it strange how so accepted the idea is. And yet, for some people looking in on parapsychology, the idea that people encounter apparitions and ghosts is not so acceptable. And yet they would fall completely within the remit of multiverse. People like Professor Bernard Carr over here, who was one of Stephen Hawking's students, who is a vice president of the Society for Psychical Research, the prestigious organization that really started parapsychology in the 1880s. He sees that most of these phenomena that we're dealing with aren't really going to be explained by the psychologists. They'll be explained by the physicists. And things like multiverse will really help us understand why people have something that seems psychic, why people seem to have an experience that seems like life after death. These early researchers noted that many people would not just report apparitions of the dead, but also of the living as well. So multiverse would totally kind of come into play and say, well, maybe we're experiencing these overlaps of different potential universes, and you're getting a brief glimpse in your vision of someone that's still alive, but they're somewhere else, but you're sure you've just seen them down at the supermarket. They were nowhere there, but there was maybe the decision to perhaps go there that day and they changed their mind and it played out and you saw a bit of it. Or it's another overlap of another time when they could have been there. So all of these ideas about multiverse seem perfectly acceptable. So it's very strange, going back to what you said about the American university system. I've never understood why it's looked upon so poorly, and yet the very first studies of psychic phenomena were at Harvard with William McDougall, and that was in the late 19-teens, 1920s, before he then moved to become part of the deanery at Duke University, and that's where things started with J.B. Ryan and Louisa Ryan. He brought them in, and that started the formal parapsychology laboratory. And there's been a master's program over the time, a couple of master's programs and a few universities, but you could count them on one hand, usually over time, the most current and active universities in the entirety of the United States that are doing parapsychology. And yet here in the United Kingdom, we've got about a dozen universities that have a taught unit or module within a degree program of parapsychology. Therefore, you can do your dissertation on an aspect of it. And there's another dozen universities besides where you could go in and do a PhD or another kind of doctorate, because even though they're not running a course, there are staff members there that could supervise a project in parapsychology because they've got a background in it. So we're thriving here in it, but we are trying to make a difference in the United States. Working now for the California Institute for Human Science, we've got both a master's and PhD pathway for parapsychology. And it's covering several different disciplines as well, positive psychology routes, noetic science, and standard psychology routes as well. I've just taken on my first PhD student there as well.
Well, that makes sense because the UK is the most haunted place in the world. And you guys understand these aspects because you've had plenty of time to experience them. Over here in the United States, we're too involved with cars,
I love it when Ron Kolick, I used to, now and then still go on it, Ghost Chronicles International, and I go over to the East Coast, and we did some of the haunted lighthouse tours, and we get in a boat, and it was so sweet doing things like that. And you go to places, and like, this place is so old, it's 50 years old. It's like, the history goes way back.
The oldest thing I have in my town is McDonald's. And that's sad, but I'm going to be over in the UK next year. I'm going to lead a tour, the Monty Python and the Holy Grail tour, and we're going to go through Scotland and go through all the castles and the movie sets. And I'm very excited about that. And the other part about this, though, is not only the ghost and the multiverse aspect, which is something I've been considering more and more lately. I've talked about it a lot on this show. I think that there's a fundamental explanation, a very basic explanation that ties a lot of these things together. And I don't know what that is yet, but we're getting close. And as soon as science will start to make an attempt at understanding consciousness and its origins and where it is and where it comes from, and some practical applications for it and figuring out how to measure it and everything else, until we get to that point. But I think that's one of the key components to all of this.
But that's massive. I mean,
it is massive.
I don't know when we get to a point where we even think we're starting to understand consciousness. We're just starting to get further with neuroscience and looking at brain activity and regions a bit more as to what's responsible for what. But what creates this awareness for all of this is a really, really big thing with this complex biological system with tiny neuron firings and stuff, these little electrical systems, and we get this. And so where does it come from? When does it really start? And where does it go? Or does it just stop at the point of death? I mean, it's big, and it's such a big problem.
Huge. It's huge.
Bigger than our brain can comprehend.
That's why I think there's something spiritual. Spiritual is the wrong word, but something that is not chemistry or biology. I think that there's something else external for this. Just to contemplate, for you and I to have the conversation about at what point did a molecule like to laugh, right, or cry, or enjoy the taste of Italian food. At what point do these things come into play, and why did nature take that course in a chemistry sort of way, in a particle way, that these were things that were cool? I think that it exists before that. That's just my take. To think that it's just chemistry, little particles combine and then consciousness arises out of that, is way too simple. It's way too simple. Why do molecules seriously decide that music was a good thing to bring joy into life? I think that's much deeper than chemistry.
I think it's a lot of time, a lot of evolution, and a lot of development of those molecules, and not just one, but just the whole being way greater than the sum of its parts, being those molecules. It's many, 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 many of them, and then getting to a point when we steadily start to make discoveries. But that even takes you back to kind of just basic things, such as who discovered that you could boil an egg and then eat it? Who was the first person to do that? All these different things. At what point did that happen? This happened. Did we discover music? Did we find laughter and things like that? When did it come into conscious thought and play for human existence? We don't have that documentation. It clearly happened at some point because we do it. But when? And where are we going next?
Yeah, I love that. Do you have, I think about this stuff all the time. My entire waking day is thinking about all of this because I think it's the most profound subject, and it's the one big question mark that we have. It's weird. We like to think that we're so smart, and we're getting there. We're still pretty dumb, but for me to just think about these things, I think is crazier than the ability itself, that I'm able to think about the micro and the macro. I can think about atoms, and then I could think about the atoms that make up this slice of pizza, and then I can think about the atoms that make up distant stars. That's insane to me. That's insane. Do dogs do that? You know what I mean? Do dogs think about atoms?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not. Meanwhile, there are dogs in the world going, bullshit, man. E = MC squared. We got a grip. We know what's going on. Do you have any psychic abilities?
No. I'm involved in psychic testing quite a lot in the labs. I was just in the Gansfeld last Monday. Funnily enough, I've got one of the books in front of me. There's a self-published thing, but this guy came and visited the university. So staring at a red sky, it's got a very faint printing on purpose, but that's what it looks like when you're in the Gansfeld with the eye shields on you, and you are staring at a red light in it. But we've been doing that since the late 60s, parapsychology. It's called the noise reduction model. So I was in that on Monday, and then I spent a lot of my time in the last few years with my PhD candidate, Kirsty Allen, being in flotation tanks. So most of those studies are based on sort of remote viewing and precognition as well. So there's a target at a distance, but sometimes they're also they are future events as well. They've not been selected until after you've finished the trial. So I'm pretty good at the flotation tank ones. I've got really good hit rate scores for them. So that's all about, maybe practice. But the only thing I'm practicing is the procedure, because I'm not practicing what the targets are. I don't know what they are. But I'm practicing hallucination and interpretation to the eventual targets and trying to match them up correctly. So you are trying to make yourself better at a psychic task. Day to day, am I psychic? No. Do I hear the dead? No, I'm a psychologist. I don't profess any abilities. I have no more than the next person and the next person.
Do you talk to the ghosts in your house?
I don't have any.
Yeah, you do too. Yeah, you're just straight up in denial. You live in England.
Well, this house was probably 1900. I've got an old blacksmith's cottage from 1800, and I always wanted to. Every night I was inside there, I wanted something to happen. Nothing. The house next door had stuff, which was the old farmer's house, and my neighbour there's always told me of strange stuff that's happened. They were even listening to me on the radio one morning on a program that we have here called Uncanny, that's on BBC Radio 4 and does podcasts on iTunes. And I was on discussing a case as the token skeptic, and he messaged me that morning and said that they'd seen an apparition again of the farmer that once lived there that had freaked him out. And he's very much a skeptic. So they did next door in my blacksmith's cottage, joined onto it. Nothing ever.
Really? Man, my house is haunted. It's just haunted. It's haunted. I live here alone. And so, and I say that because I don't have anything to blame the events on, right? A child, a significant other, a dog, a cat. You know, when something moves or makes a noise or something happens in here and it ain't me, right? And I've chosen to just ride out the experience. Instead of getting freaked out or, you know, bringing in mediums and installing FLIR cameras or whatever it is. You know, I haven't done any of that, but yeah, that it's just haunted and I just deal with it. Have you ever seen a ghost?
No. No. I've been to many haunted locations over the years. Sometimes formal research, sometimes for charity events where you've got members of the public that like to ghost hunt, and seen a lot of images on people's phone when they say, "Oh, you must see this," or, you know, what do you make of that? And usually it looks like pareidolia. You know, someone's taken a very obscure picture in a darkened location where the camera's even struggling to see what it is you're trying to take a picture of, and in the distance you can see faces in the woodwork or unusual shapes. And it's human nature when we can't see what's going on in a familiar or even unfamiliar setting to pick out human forms, things that we are familiar with, or a potential threat as well, which will be another human being. So seeing things in some of these locations move. We had a few instances where things had moved on their own, like rocks and things like that. And when they were picked up, they were hot, which was very, very strange. But no, I'd love to see a ghost, but no, that's never happened. But
it'll change your life, man. It'll change your life. It'll change your life. So much so that I'm not going to go through every experience or anything like that. But a few years ago, after the show, I went to the bathroom, the bathroom that's down this hall, right, on the north. Heading to the north side of the house. So I go in there, and the mirror in the bathroom faces you.
Yeah.
But the door's open, and I could see out the door down the end of the hall where there's a double door down there that I have a music studio in. This is not the music studio. I know what you're thinking, but I have a music room down there with drums and amps and guitars and stuff in it, and a PA system. So I'm looking in the mirror, and behind me in the double doors that I can see in the mirror, this thing goes by like this. And I scream. I see it. I watched it. I didn't see it out of the corner of my eye. Callum, I'm looking at it, and I see it walk behind me. And I fall back. I scream. I go out. Now, this is why I'll say it'll change your life. I don't go into that hallway now without turning the lights on. I won't do it. I won't do it. It's crazy when you see it for yourself. I went in the room. I turned on all the lights, went in there. There's nothing in there, of course. but that doesn't change the event itself. So then I have to step back and go, what was that? What was that? Now, there wasn't anything in there. Was that the multiverse overlapping? Did the frequencies just lock in? And for a moment, there was somebody, walking through there and then we became disconnected again in the overlap. I don't know. The event itself was real, and it changed me fundamentally down to my core.
Did it look like a person?
Yeah, it was a head. It was like this, man.
It's a very strange stance.
Yeah, man. Like the claws were out. I don't know.
Very Nosferatu-esque.
Yes, it was Nosferatu. The shadow of Nosferatu on the wall. But yeah, it was black. It was definite in shape. I saw the head. There was something out in front. I know I'm doing this for effect, but it looked like something like that walking, and it went the length of the door. It walked right past. Yeah.
How long have you owned the property for?
5 years.
And did they warn you when buying it? Oh, it's a little bit haunted now.
after so this is what I did. After the day after I moved in, that first week, all kinds of stuff was just going on. I'm not going to list it, but it was crazy. Stuff being moved. I'm watching stuff move, hearing things, and then I caught myself talking to the ghost or whatever was going on. That, keep doing what you're doing. I don't care. I'm not going to get out of bed. I'm not going to do this. I'm not freaking out. But I went around to my neighbors. Yeah, I was like, so who lived in the house before? I'm not going to go to my neighbors and go, man, a ghost. No, I'm not going to do that. But I'm going to ask about, and everybody said the same thing. Oh, man, they were a nice family. They built the house in 1984 and they were great. And they had like 4 kids. And yeah. Okay. All right. I didn't push anybody about anything freaky happen, any dead bodies, any blood.
They didn't add, when they moved out, it was only him that moved out.
Yeah.
He was such a good gardener, but he always gardened at nighttime.
Yep. He was always moving wheelbarrows full of dirt.
Stone slabs and all.
Yeah. But no, I got nothing strange. So I looked into the area itself and didn't find anything. Nothing really strange in the history here. It's a desert. I live in the Mojave Desert, and before we built this town in the 1950s for Lockheed Skunk Works and Edwards Air Force Base are here. So they built all of that stuff for research and to build, planes and aerospace and all of that stuff. But before that, this was a desert.
Right.
So this everything that is here is new. You can drive out to the desert and see what it looked like 1,000 years ago. There's nothing there. And that's where I live. There wasn't any indigenous communities that lived here or anything like that. So I don't know. I really don't know. But when you see it for the first time, it's a paradigm shift. It's really interesting. What about the ideas? I know we mentioned the multiverse. When I talk to ghost hunters and people that look into this stuff, including mediums, what they think is a ghost or an apparition, what is a full-bodied apparition, shadow figure, what do they think these things are and what is causing it? What do you think causes an apparition?
Well, the early founders of the Society for Psychical Research, so that was formed in 1882. I've got the proceedings. Well, the proceedings that are in the middle. Just loads of these dark ones. These started in 1882. And that was because of the rise of spiritualism in the late 1840s with the Fox sisters. And when these scholars of physics and chemistry got together and decided to create this organization to look collectively into what was going on, is there anything new here for science to learn, or do we already have the answers and we're actually fooling ourselves? They looked into apparitional cases. They did some mass surveys of the time. They had a massive 2-volume book called Phantasms of the Living that came out in 1886 to start to survey these kinds of experiences people were having. And their early thoughts on apparitions were that they had nothing really to do with survival of death. That was the beginnings of their thought systems. They were very skeptical about them, but indeed people do report apparitions. So maybe they are an aspect of psychic phenomena. They're a projection, a telepathic projection that we pass on to others if there's more than one person seeing it. If it's just you on your own and it's subjective, then you are projecting it out there for you to see and experience, and it seems very real and out there. So that was their initial thinking, really. And if indeed there's some legitimacy to what the apparition does, it casts shadows, it can reflect things, it produces information that you shouldn't know about. If there are multiple witnesses to it as well, which we call collective cases, well, actually, there's built up over time some really good cases, and a case for the idea that some of them do present evidence suggestive that maybe this is an aspect of someone surviving after death in some way. So that you've got to really juggle with the most difficult task of how do you separate it just being a psychic experience if there's no conventional explanation and we've created it, or can we separate that and say it's not down to us, it's independent of itself. So I was part of the Bigelow essays. So Robert Bigelow, the aerospace entrepreneur who owned Skinwalker Ranch, a few years ago, he put out an offer for $500,000 for the best 25,000 word essay of permanent life after death, permanent survival beyond bodily death. And, you know, a lot of that stuff would lean towards apparitions. In our essay that I did with 3 other colleagues, I had to specifically trawl through the history books of my field and look for the best case of hauntings that would present that, and also the best cases of deathbed apparitions as well. So some cases seem to present this independence of the apparition that suggests that it's out there, it's not come from in here. But you've got to take it on a case-by-case basis. It's such a big problem.
Yeah, the winner of that essay was a friend of mine, Jeffrey Mishlove.
We co-direct the parapsychology program at CIHS.
Yes. You know, I'm going to say this about him. I'm such a fanboy, and I've been following him since the 80s, right? And no, I'm being very serious. His TV show, I used to get videotapes of it back in the 80s and watched it. And I've had the opportunity to hang out with him. He's been on the show a couple of times too. But one of the smartest people I know, and one of the reasons why that essay worked for him is because not only does he do the research, but he has interviewed and worked with the absolute best and the brightest out there. And for sure, if somebody was going to put forth an essay in that regards with the NDE, Mishlove was, you know what I mean? And I was so happy for him when he won that prize. That's a life-changing thing. And he's just such a nice guy. The other part of this, though, is we have the ghosts, we have the apparitions, we have these ideas, and where they may be coming from. But then there is that Jungian, is that a word? I just said it. Jungian's a word, right? Is that in the dictionary? There's the Jungian idea of mass consciousness and influencing of others that have a causality to seeing, and then that shows you how great the brain is, that the brain can flip around and create something for you if you want it bad enough.
Well, we can just sit in pure group conformity when you can convince other people within a group that something's happening. You can have it on the basis of simple eyewitness testimony when you're all witness to events and you start discussing it, and your perception, your memory bleeds into other people's recall. They start to second guess. If you want to extend it to ghost and
right. Is that's totally, you can change somebody's mind.
But then they will think that is exactly what happened. Then so look at it on the ghost hunts when a group of people think they've seen a ghost. The description then starts to bleed to other people. If you were to separate them all, you might get a very different description of what happened, or people saying they saw nothing. With EVP experiments, the moment someone goes, whoosh, Did you hear the name Chris then? Did you? Yeah, I think I heard the name Chris. You've already said it. You've primed it. You've said what you think the random sound is saying, and you've just tried to make sense out of nonsense, and you've started to then bleed it to other people where they can't get that out of their head. You can do some great studies on, I've seen it in master's and PhD dissertations where people have looked at the psychology of EVP. And the moment you start to tell them what something says, then they'll hear it and you can't unhear it as well. So that group conformity can bleed and spread like wildfire.
And then what do we do with the crystal clear EVP that is not open to interpretation?
It's very, very rare that you get that. I mean, if you look at the original, no. Let me go. If you look at the original formal studies from the 1950s on reel-to-reel tape, what people like Raymond Bayless and Attila Vonzele were getting were bangs, rap scratches, and whispers and stuff like that. When you start to move forward to Dr. Konstantin Raudover and things like that, they start to get really quite ambiguous, and a lot of parapsychologists just weren't having it. I remember when I spoke to John Randall about it, and he was a biologist and parapsychologist. He said he remembered when Breakthrough came out, and he just read it and threw the book in the bin, in the trash can.
There's a lot of trash out there, for sure. Okay, and to suggest to somebody what they are hearing before they hear it, that's bullshit, and nobody should ever do that. That is wrong. But I was doing a TV show. I was in the archive tunnel underneath a police station here in Los Angeles. Got a camera crew, got the whole thing, sound, the whole thing. We're down there, and I'm with Susan Slaughter and a production assistant, the three of us, and the cameras are on us. And we're in a tunnel where the archives are, and dead quiet. I've never done an EVP, not a real one, not like this. Got the little recorder out, and a question was asked. It doesn't matter, are you here? Did you commit the murder? Whatever. And we wait about 15 seconds, dead quiet, play it back. I swear to you, I swear. Here's the question. Did you have anything to do with the murder? Here's the answer. Get a chocolate shake. Jimmy Church loves them. I was like, what? I heard it. And I was like, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, here, but I'm listening. I'm like, how? This wasn't on TV, Callum. I'm standing there, and wow. I've done a few others, and I've got friends that are pretty good at it and stuff, but that was the one time where it happened to me. And it was loud and crystal clear. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. I could not believe it. I could barely drive home after that. It was
but you went to get a chocolate shake.
Yeah. It was disturbing. Now, what about, we've got 2 minutes left before the break, and then we'll pick this up when we come back. Phone calls from the dead. Now, hold the phone. You've never seen a ghost, right? But you've never seen a ghost. You're working at it. I get that. But you wrote a book called Phone Calls from the Dead. What's going on there? And then we'll do the setup now, and we'll pick it up when we come back.
Well, it's been stuck with me since I was an undergraduate. So I read the original book by Rogo and Bayless when I was an undergraduate, and it came out in 1979. But I didn't think of anything of it. I got the book, saw the title, and just threw it on a pile of other books to read. But it was close to that time, just by pure coincidence, that a news post came up about a train collision and someone allegedly calling their family, who they later discovered was dead at the time. And the news outlets widely published it as a phone call from the dead. So I thought, well, Rogo and Bayless, their only collaboration really on a book was that one. So I've been reading their other independent books, and I thought they were great. So I finally picked it up, read it cover to cover, and couldn't believe that people were reporting full-blown conversations. So I wanted to look into more about what that was about, and had anyone else published on it, and had parapsychology actually given it any attention whatsoever besides that book. So that's where it all started.
What do you make of that? Is it, we've got 30 seconds. You can give me the short answer. Do spirits have the ability to affect electronics? And they know this.
My opinion would be no.
Then how would how would a phone call from the dead occur?
There are so many conventional explanations that could be at play, and it's even harder now with the state that we're in, with so much technology and ability to fraudulently create these or for errors to occur. But they're more fascinating, I think, when you go back to just the straight landline, which is what a lot of these were occurring on. And so are there any misperceptions going on? And we can discuss after the break what kinds of cases would actually be really of interest compared to ones that are mundane and maybe conventional but seem paranormal.
Callum, stay right there. Our guest tonight, Callum Cooper, live from the UK. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight we're talking about parapsychology. He is a professor. We'll be right back after this short break. Callum, stay right there. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Stay with us.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month.
I am hosting, speaking, and presenting once again for the Conscious Life Expo, the largest conference of its type in the world. February 20th through the 23rd, 2026 at the LAX Hilton. Speakers, event, and schedule easy. Just visit ConsciousLifeExpo.com. I will be hosting and speaking at the Sedona Ascension Retreat, March 20th through the 22nd, 2026 in Sedona, Arizona. An amazing list of speakers, and it's beautiful Sedona. Come and hang out with us and just go to SedonaAscensionRetreats.com. I'm heading back to the Midwest for the Contact Modalities Expo, May 1st through the 3rd, 2026, in Delavan, Wisconsin, at the Lake Resort. It is beautiful. This is a great conference right in the heart of the Midwest, where I'm from. I'll see you there. Just go to Contact Modalities Expo, that's XPO.com. I will be hosting and presenting once again at Contact in the Desert. That's May 28th through June 1st, 2026, the largest UFO conference in the world. Come and hang out with us June 23rd through July 1st. Tickets and everything else that you need is at contactinthedesert.com. Want to change your life? Want that paradigm shift? Then visit Peru with Brian Forrester and myself for the Inca Celebration of the Sun, June 23rd through July 1st, 2026. A full 10 days of visiting the country, all of the amazing sights, and of course, the celebration of the winter solstice. It's all simple to do. Go to hiddenincatours.com. Come join us for the Monty Python Scotland Tour, August 1st through the 9th, 2026. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event where you get to go to the castles from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. August 1st through the 9th, 2026. Just visit HaleyARamsey.com.
Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's Fade to Black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut.
Jimmy Church Guy TV, Fade to Black, here at Machu Picchu with Brian Forster and Hidden Inca Tours. Amazing tour so far, Brian, but we're here to announce what we're going to do next year in 2026. What's going on?
Okay, November 2026, we're going to have our major tour of Peru and Bolivia, either a pre or post tour of Paracas and Nazca on the coast. And then after that, 6 days in Easter Island.
Bucket list, Easter Island. Come join Brian and I and his amazing team here at Hidden Inca Tours for Peru, Bolivia, and Easter Island. Signing out. Say goodbye, Brian.
Bye, gang.
River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Callum Cooper is with us, Professor Callum Cooper. He is a professor of parapsychology coming to us live from the UK. And right before the break, we were talking about phone calls from the dead. Now, Callum, when we use something as specific as phone calls from the dead, and you bring up landlines, I just feel that when you're on the other side, for some reason, at the quantum level, spirits and whatever they may be, could be from the multiverse, have figured out a way to communicate, and it falls through electronics. I don't think it's that big of a deal to them.
Well, there's some interesting stuff in the 19-teens and 1920s. There was a book in Brazil that translates to Voices from Beyond by Telephone. And the person who wrote it was Oscar de Argonal. And that was a medium who believed that their spirit communication came through the actual telephone. And so much so that they had ringing and then they would pick it up and their mediumship came through these voices allegedly manipulating the electrical system and producing recognized speech. So this really was more so the medium of the telephone than of the human being. But there were loads of people of that time as well trying to build telephones where they said it's got such delicate instrumentation that I believe it will give the dead a chance to manipulate it and make contact with the living. So these thoughts of a crossover or a sort of a thinness between the veil to be able to actually make contact was all very much kind of instilled in this idea of building these telephones. And even Thomas Edison jumping on this bandwagon as well, saying that he was going to build such a device and have delicate instrumentation involved in it as well. So these theories are battered about, and even for multiverse and what Rogo and Alex called their paraphysical theory of voices just emanating from the air like in a seance room, but directing themselves through the telephone.
Okay. The idea behind a disembodied voice.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's break that down a bit. For me, I was a complete skeptic. Oh, watching, and now I'm fully woo. Don't get me wrong. There's something going on. But, you watch this stuff on TV and you're like, but it happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time, I've had it a few times, but the first time that had happened, and I'm in a room full of people and we all hear it. This is also on a TV show. I got cameras. I've got the sound guy, I've got all these people here. I have Tony Rathman and his wife, Cherie, great researcher, sitting in front of me. I've got Susan Slaughter on the other side of the room. We had about 10 people in there. We all heard it. And we look at each, I got to tell you, and it wasn't a word, it was a hum. Right? Okay. Sounded just like that. It was a British hum, by the way. I've told everybody, I said, what did it sound like? It sounded British. How does a hum sound British? I don't know. But what I heard was a British hum. And then about, it was about 6 months ago here in the studio. And this goes back right to everything that you're discussing right now. I end the show. And this room here that the studio is in is completely soundproofed, right? That sound deadening walls, floor, all the wall, the ceiling's treated, right? So when I take off my headphones at the end of the show, it's a vacuum in here. You know what I mean? It's quiet. From behind, in front of me are these monitors. From behind the monitor on this side, let me change cameras. Will this help? From over here, right? Let's see, will this help? No. Okay. So from over here, a creak happened, like a door or like a step when you step on a creaky step or a rocking chair, you know, a creak. And it was loud. And I was like, what creaked? And I get up and I walk around to the back of my setup here and there's nothing there. I'm moving stuff. Nothing's creak. And I have to sit back and go, okay, that is anomalous. That is a phenomenon right there. That whatever did that caused the sound pressure waves to move for me to hear it in my ear without anything physical causing it. That's bizarre to me. And when you look at the world of parapsychology and you're analyzing this and you're trying to break this down, that part, disembodied voices and things that just appear out of the ether without anything there to create the sound, that's real. Millions of people have experienced this. Not one. It's not like some psychosis.
Yeah.
You know, how do you break that down?
Well, goodness, I mean, go back to the early seances and that kind of stuff's happening all the time. And then you transfer it through to the telephone stuff. And what perked my interest was more so interpretation. This guy's in a train crash in California, and his family start getting repeated calls on their mobile phone from him. And when they answer, it's just static. And when they call back, there's nothing there. And at 3:30 in the morning, the calls stop at the point they find his body in the wreckage. And they know there's a live kind of thing trying to find him. But the media then pushes this as a phone call from the dead. Well, that's not a sound of anything. That's just how the mobile phones react. And you've interpreted that. So a full-on voice, a conversation coming from somewhere and coming down the telephone when you know at the other end the person is dead. So where's this coming from? Or when the person can't even be near the phone at the time, those are also weird ones as well. I mean, coming from out of the air, this is just the only way Rogo and Bayless could start to put explanations to some of those instances that seemingly didn't have one. But it's very strange when you get ones from people that are living as well. So they mentioned it in their original one. And then when I took this forward and did a study of a further 50 cases, I mentioned some of these ones from the living as well. So Rogo's own experience went like this. It was 10 o'clock on a bright Thursday morning, and I thought about making a call to a colleague of mine at the UCLA Neuropsychiatric Institute. Although I thought about making that call, I never actually did. But by 4 o'clock that afternoon, I got the shock of my life when a call came in from the very department of the psychologist I'd thought about calling. It was their research assistant, and he said he was answering my message. When asked what in blazes he was talking about, he said at 10 o'clock that morning, a call had come into them from me. The caller had left my name, my number, and asked that the call be returned. He had the intention to call, but changes his mind, and then seemingly the call still takes place for someone else. Where's that voice coming from? What is actually calling the other phone? If indeed he's not just forgotten that he did make the call and he didn't have the conversation, he just left his details. Really, really strange. I mean, there's so many other strange things in the early seance rooms besides just voices coming out of nowhere. But with these telephone calls, it's very fascinating when you've actually got a report of a conversation. Someone has picked up, they've interacted with another voice, and then only afterwards did they realize that the person was dead long before the call took place. So why did it happen? Or that person was nowhere near a telephone. So why
was it Rogo or Bayless that made that phone call?
That one was to do with Rogo.
Okay,
Rogo's
so what do you think? Are you looking at this as a pragmatic? I'm going to use the word skeptical. Don't take that the wrong way. Are you looking at it like that, looking for a reasonable, mundane explanation, or are you leaning into the woo-woo?
Oh no, completely conventional explanation. I think some of the biggest compliments I got on the book was it should have been called A Skeptic's Guide. and it is that. That's my job. If I worked in nursing, I'd be a skeptic of nursing. If I worked in geography, I'd be a skeptic of geography. Everyone in every discipline, in every science, should be a good critical thinker to make sure that the methods they're going through are the best they can be. The people you're dealing with are being dealt with in the best possible way. And your outcomes, your data, whatever it may be, are understood and interpreted in the best and fairest possible ways. And you're looking for all the interpretations and solutions of things that could lead you to have a false understanding of the outcome or a misperception. You don't want that. You don't want errors. You don't want fraud. You don't want cheating. You want good, pure data that you put barriers in place to stop any errors getting through. So
is the paranormal though errors in the data?
You could get anomalous artifacts, though, in every branch of science. I mean, every branch of science is dealing with certain aspects of anomalies to then take the next step and discover the process. It's interesting that you say it like that, because Joseph Banks Rhine really coined the term ESP, extrasensory perception, in his book in 1934, which was a summary of all the studies they'd done at Duke University on the Zener cards. So the star, the cross, the wavy line, the circle, the square. I don't know if I brought any up here with me. I might share some in a bit. But that book was pioneering that title, and people have used ESP ever since. But Chuck Honiton, another parapsychologist later on, he said, we can look at this in another way. Error someplace. Do we really actually have ESP, or is it something that looks like ESP, looks like a phone call from the dead or whatever else, but actually we've not spotted that there is an error someplace that is responsible for why we think we're having a strange experience? It's not ESP, it's an error someplace. So we have to try and decipher one from the other. That's why good critical thinking comes into play, healthy skepticism, and applications of things like the Occam's razor. So this idea that we've got this onion with multiple layers to an onion, as we know when we cut through it, but we don't just want the layers coming off. We want to be more definite than that. We want a razor blade, and we want to take razor thin slices off and go through the layers, and the least amount of jumps, logical steps you take are usually the most likeliest conventional explanation for what you're dealing with than going through several layers to then say it must be the dead trying to contact us, because that's making a number of jumps where we don't have a conventional mechanism for that or explanation. So there must be something very close by that has a conventional explanation, and we don't need to go through many layers.
The Occam's razor answer to that, the most simplest explanation, the most mundane, simplest explanation, it's the frigging ghost talking to us from another parallel reality. That's the simplest. Jumping into, it could be this, it could be that, it's physical, it's your imagination, whatever it may be, that's making it difficult. That's not an Occam's razor type of deduction. An Occam's razor deduction in this is, it could be the multiverse, it could be a parallel dimension, something overlapping, something very, very, very basic, and something very simple. And it certainly falls under the definition of paranormal. For me, that's the comfort zone for me. Anything else, that means that everybody that has these experiences, it has some kind of psychosis. They're manifesting this themselves. It's their imagination. It's the cross between wires in a telephone network, whatever it may be. That's way too complicated.
The point that you raise is I raised this as well, saying that and there are papers on this. Does Occam's razor apply to every discipline? Is it useful or can it be misused?
Right.
And we do have instances of misuse of the Occam's razor. And in this instance, what if the first jump, that first layer it's telepathy? Well, that would be perfectly acceptable if we had a working mechanism for it. But in this current state of play, because we don't for that or survival of death, then the explanation is many layers down than compared to what we do know. And the principle is to take the steps of what we do know. You can't just shave through and say it's a ghost or it is telepathy when we don't have a working mechanism. But my argument is we're failing the system of Occam's razor if indeed it does turn out to be that when we discover a mechanism for it. It's that conundrum. We just don't know at the moment, so it's not acceptable. But what if? What if we did?
What if I always mention this on every show, and it needs to be drilled down. I don't want it to get away from us. Sean Carroll's one of my favorite physicists. He's amazing. But man, sometimes he rubs me the wrong way, right? But his work is good. His work is good. But he said last year on an AMA that he does every month, the question always comes up, always does. Okay, so what is consciousness? So his answer was, I don't have the time to think about something that I can't see. It's a waste of time. I don't even think about it. And that's the problem that we have, isn't it? Right? It can't be measured. They can't throw it in a lab. There isn't a way to, therefore, it's not worth discussing. And it could be one little thing that explains all of this. And we haven't gotten there yet.
I think another thing with parapsychology is people have thought about it in a career sense or getting involved. How do I make money from that? You're talking about non-material things, people reading each other's minds or ghosts. What's the point in even getting involved in that? So I can see where he's coming from with that. Can I just say, I've seen in the chat someone has asked, and my apologies, you asked me right at the start the definition of parapsychology, but I didn't then really define what it looks into or what they are. So I'll give everyone a basic rundown because I've seen what is telepathy. And of course, so, right, parapsychology looks at 3 different strands of things. One is ESP, which I've just mentioned, and that breaks down into 3. That's telepathy, a mind-to-mind interaction, clairvoyance, an alleged ability to see information at a distance, or precognition. So a feeling or a distinct vision of something before it happens. Then we have PK, psychokinesis or telekinesis, the ability to influence people, systems, the environment via the power of the mind alone. So that's the mind reaching out and doing things. Whereas with ESP, everything is about things coming to us. Another person's thoughts, information at a distance, something before it happens. But PK forces itself out. The other stuff comes in, allegedly, in the way it plays out. And then the third strand is survival or survival hypothesis. That's anything that suggests survival of awareness or the mind out of the body or beyond permanent bodily death. So we'd start with out-of-body experiences, feeling that you've detached from your body and you're above yourself or traveling, to a near-death experience where you get near to death, some sort of threat happens, and you feel like you've seen the tunnel of light or you're separated from your body and then you've returned because someone's revived you or you naturally came around, through to then mediumship, apparitions, reincarnation cases in children. We've mentioned EVP, haunting type phenomena, poltergeist. We could go on. So ESP, PK, and survival, that's what parapsychology looks at, and that's the definition of all of them.
Have you witnessed PK in action?
So in a few different ways. So when I used to go along quite a lot to allegedly haunted locations, I was with some police officers one time when we were in an old cotton mill and they were throwing rocks out at, pretty much this time in the morning. It's coming up to 4:30 here, and they're throwing rocks out, and there's just one door into this big room that would have housed loads of looms making fabric many years ago, going back and forth. And they were just commenting out into the dark, and then something just went bang, and then tap, 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 ting, ting, ting over the metal plate that filled a gap in the floor. and it was all wooden floor besides that, and it just rolled straight up to our feet, and we just looked at it and looked at each other and picked it up, and it was so hot. It was just bizarre. It was just another piece of rubble. There was no radiators in there. There was no heating. Just very, very strange. But then I think the most fascinating PK, even though it might seem mundane to others, was I was in the Rhine Research Center in Durham, North Carolina.
I just had the director from Rhine on the show.
Oh, John. Yeah, John.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's amazing.
Yeah, love John. And I was with John. That's who I was with. And Alice Tanous Kelly. So she's one of the nieces of Dr. Alex Tanous, who was a psychic and psychologist who claimed to go out of body at will, could project light from his eyes, spoke to the dead. And so anyway, Alice and John are chatting over here, and John set me up with one of these little kind of cog wheels, velocity meter, and they've been called other things as well. But it's got no 9-volt battery in it, and all that does anyway is just blink an LED when revolutions are occurring. And it's in a bell jar. And he said, just think about it. Put your hands near the jar like this and just think about turning the cogwheel. And as I start to listen into their conversation, because not much is happening, so I'm half paying attention to them, I'm half paying attention to the cogwheel, I can start to see the needles going through ever so slightly, just millimeter by millimeter, just going through. And John says, is it moving yet? And I said, yeah, like it's in motion now. He said, but what are you doing? What are you thinking? I said, well, I was initially going, come on, turn, that kind of just really trying to strain it. And that's not happening. And I said, it's actually, I'm half paying attention to you, half paying attention to this. And he said, there we go. We've got that nice sort of altered state happening where, you're not really paying attention much. You're just lost in the flow of what's going on. And that's also what we conform to at the University of Northampton. Most of our studies in the lab, we've really favoured the idea that psi is conducive to altered states of consciousness. I was just washing the pots when I was running an errand and driving the car, when all of a sudden I was watching my favourite TV show and I looked up and suddenly saw it's always I was doing X when Y happened.
Right.
And you're usually lost in the flow of a routine, something mundane, something that you enjoy doing, and just time passes. You're not conscious accurately of how much time is gone because you're lost in the motion of things you typically do, especially when it comes to watching the TV and things like that. And then something happens. So that's what we would call flow. So a psychologist called Malay Csikszentmihalyi talked about flow being a state of happiness, contentment, and time flies when you're having fun. But there's so many studies over time with parapsychology to show that altered states are psychoinducive. Going to sleep and waking up, those periods between that, the hypnagogic going in and the hypnopompic coming out. Certainly when we're dreaming, we have strange experiences that seem to be psychic, and where we come back with accurate information about the future or talking to the dead. Hypnotic induction could help. Psychedelics could help. The lab techniques that we've got could help. So all of these things, if it's hypnotic, if it's getting us lost in the moment of things, that's when we tend to, in day-to-day circumstances, report things. And then in the lab, if we can copy that in some way, it seems to produce very successful results.
I'm going to have Julia Mossbridge on the show on Thursday, and I, her work and her work with Dean Radin and getting into these subjects. One of the fascinating aspects of their research and what they have concluded is that we are able to, through consciousness, affect particles at the quantum level. And that effect of those particles is very, 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 very slight. But there's a lot of particles, right? And so when you affect, I was going to say a bad word, a big amount of these particles at a very slight amount, but in the end, it's a big change. It's a big activation in something. And I think that there is more to look at in this research. I know that Ryan is looking into this, and John and what they're doing up at Ions, but I think that's a very important part of this, that we can't see these particles move, but we can see the effects of what is ultimately happening to these particles on the back end. Do you think that that is ultimately what it is? We're affecting at the quantum level. We can't see it. We can only see the results of it.
Maybe. I mean, I'm not involved in the kinds of, that kind of level of research that they're doing, looking at things at the quantum level. John has told me so much about it. I mean, we're dealing with kind of face value psychology at the University of Northampton, where I've been involved in lab studies. Here's the Ganzfeld. We want to get you relaxed. There's going to be future video clips you're going to watch, but everything that you experience in the Ganzfeld, we want to know everything you see or hear and speak about, and then we'll see if it relates to these targets in the future. So you've said this, what's happening next? And maybe on that micro level, loads of things are happening inside the body and inside the brain. Of course they are.
Right.
But loads of very natural things are happening as well. For you to ultimately come out with a mentation and all these things, loads of little things are happening inside the body. And therefore, loads of little things happening if psi is real to then help you get information about a future event that's reaching out beyond your body. And that is, that takes us back again to hyperspatial models and all sorts of ideas. This idea of there being a psi field, that something is reaching out, or morphic fields that biology would propose, that information is reaching out and obtaining what we need. We could go in so many different directions about theories of psi. They just don't help us very much until we understand more about what's going on in here first. That the whole principle of when we started the flotation tanks was because John Lilly, who pioneered them back in the 1950s, in 1969, he gave a guest dinner speech to the Parapsychological Association in New York City. And he said, guys, get 2 tanks and send one person in one with some images that they've been looking at, and put another in another, and see if they'll pick up on what the first person's thinking about. And so that whole principle is based on, is it all in here when we're in the tanks and we have hallucinations? Or is it out there? And if it's out there, then you'll be able to show through these demonstrations that someone else is picking up on it, or you're getting accurate information beyond what chance expects. When you've got 4 possible targets, let's say, and one of them's picked to be the target, do you beat that 25% chance level? With things like the Ganzfeld and doing that, studies have shown outcomes of 38 to 45% outcomes, which is incredible.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Explain to the audience what the Ganzfeld is.
So Ganzfeld, again, it's German for whole field, and that's the image on this book we mentioned earlier. It's probably not the best, but this is a person
it's great
with the ping pong balls over the eyes, or eye shields. This is a book called Staring at a Red Sky by Andrew Endersby, who got interested in parapsychology and sort of just wrote up his experiences in this self-published book. And the last part is he came to the University of Northampton and tried it out. So this started in the 1960s as one of many sensory deprivation experiments in psychology. There was a lot of behavioral psychology at the time, and people were fascinated with what happens to humans when they're left in darkened conditions or caves without light sources or clocks. What does happen to your conscious awareness? By the mid-1970s, 2 different sets of parapsychologists picked up the Ganzfeld, or the noise reduction model as it's called, and applied it to psychic testing. So while you're in that, and we've got targets for you somewhere, can you accurately come out with information that marries up to those targets, that an independent judge can look at what you've said, look at the targets, and pick out the right target against decoys? So the Ganzfeld, you've got those eye shields on, you've got a red light beaming down, you've got headphones on, much like the ones that you're wearing, and you're hearing induction, someone telling you to stretch your arms and your legs for 10 minutes and telling you to hold it, now let go, feel relaxed, feel completely relaxed, over and over, and then 40 minutes of pink noise, so white noise with a reduced hiss, and that's just constantly playing in your ears. And as it does, you start to hear conversations, noises of where you think you are, if you think you've traveled to a certain location or an event. Images in your mind start to come to the forefront of the pink haze that you see on the ping pong balls. And so the idea is all these internal thoughts, while you're in sensory isolation, do they project themselves forward, and are they accurate to whatever it is you're meant to be focusing on? And usually you're doing this inside a perception lab, so an electromagnetically shielded chamber that's soundproof and darkened conditions as well. So all that's in there is the red light. So that's the Ganzfeld. I need to say, without kind of giving it the name, but some of you may have seen, if you watch ghost hunting shows, that they've been using on there, but calling it something else. I got invited to like a general ghost hunting conference recently, and they were mentioning it. It was annoying me so much because it was a complete monkey see, monkey do. I've seen parapsychologists do it. Let's do this and rebrand it. It's really unethical.
Are you talking about the Estes method?
Oh no, he said.
Okay, so
don't give it a name.
No. Okay, so
really it's really unethical.
I totally I get where you're coming from. I haven't done it. I haven't been on the headphone end of it, but I've done this for television. I have been the question asker in that. What I have seen is the white faces of the people that take off those headphones and the dreadful scenario that they're put through. I can't imagine doing, you know what I mean, being this person with that, because I don't know.
So I did this the other Monday. It took me 45 minutes of paperwork before I even started going into it, being led through it by my mentor, Professor Chris Rowe. And we've been doing it for years. And the amount of ethics and risk assessment going in. He is a senior psychologist. I'm a senior psychologist. And then there's follow-up paperwork afterwards as well. In these shows, where's the psychologist? Where's the psychotherapist? Where's the psychiatrist?
There's nobody. No, I've done these shows. We go straight in, headphones on, stuff gets turned up, the white noise is coming in, and
it's a complete, the fact that social media started taking it on, and then what's it achieving? What's the study rationale? What's our controls? Who's judging the mentations on the outcome? How are we looking after the person going in? Where's the follow-up with them coming out? Do we know the mental health conditions of this person? Have we looked into the ethics of the adverse consequences it could cause? Where are you publishing this? Who's going to peer review it? No one. The answer to all those questions is NA. There's nothing. It's just for show on TV, and it's really annoying that something that is so specific to a lab study and lab study alone is taken in something that is so beautiful. And the important thing, if it's a haunted location, it's the location you should be concerned about. This is where people have made claims, and it could be new, it could be old, but it's an environment you've got to immerse yourself in to understand why people had experience in the first place. Why on earth would you want to put yourself into sensory deprivation when that's got nothing to do with the location? And it doesn't matter about what people say about, well, we've got it linked up to a broken radio. Nonsense. I've got headphones. I've got headphones on. I heard this. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It is completely irrelevant, and above all else, unethical. No one's controlling it. It's not got any goal. I called it the other day a hose that no one's holding on to. It is
like that. You bring up such a great point, which is what I was mentioning.
Let me say it again. The Gansfeld using Hauntings, the Gansfeld.
Yeah. But when somebody goes through one of those sessions, and after 15 minutes or a half hour, or whatever, and they take those headphones off, they look like they just went through a nightmare.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
I mean, it's, there's no way I would ever do it. No.
Isn't it enough in some of those locations where they insist on having the lights out that, someone's just sat in the dark anyway, taking in the environment? I remember someone on social media randomly asking me, I'm not, I do go on haunting investigations, but I'm not the typical ghost hunter like, parapsychologists like Lloyd Auerbach and others that have really dedicated themselves to that. Mm-hmm. It did always interest me. But they said, Cal, can you help me? What's wrong? What's the best night vision camera to use? So what do you want to use it for? Oh, well, this pub, they've said that, all these glasses at a time are sliding off the bar and smashing. I said, that's fantastic. Have you interviewed the witnesses? Oh, yeah, I'm going to do that. But which of these cameras? I said, I'm still not sure why you need night vision. What's this for? Well, I'm going to go along. I'm going to investigate. Okay, so when are people reporting these glasses smashing? Oh, about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon when the bar's full of people. Right, okay, so why don't you go back to the conditions in which it's reported and sit and observe? Is anyone reporting that at 3 or 4 in the morning? Oh, no. Why do you want night vision then? Why are you going to go to the exact opposite of the conditions? Think of it in a crime scene. If someone has said to the police officers, this guy keeps robbing the store at 2 in the afternoon. All right, well, we'll turn up at 2 in the morning when it's shut, and we'll see if anyone comes and robs the store. You've just been told when consistently something is happening, and you want to go and do the exact opposite. What, for effect? You know, ghost hunting can be really boring, where actually in full daylight conditions, early in the morning or late in the afternoon, that's when people are reporting things. And it's been so well known to be those typical time periods that it worked itself into early poetry. When I was walking down the stair, I met a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. I wish that man would go away. But when I returned home at 3, that man was waiting there for me. And when I looked about the hall, I couldn't see him there at all. It's always early mornings and late afternoons and things like that when people have reported things. People are typically asleep at night, so they're not going to be reporting all kinds of things about the home. The most you'll get are reports of waking up and seeing an apparition at the end of the bed, which is something that's interesting. So sleep in that room. If that's what people are reporting, replicate what they've done. But most of it are apparitions during daylight hours. So some of that as well. Everything from the Gansfeld used in this, which is very recent, and it's silly rebranding, which is very irritating. And again, very frustrating for the psychologists and people spending a lot of time with the paperwork and the ethics to do these things, to see it just done without any guidance, procedures, safeguardings. I was on a show called Paranormal Captured where they started doing it. And as we did the recording, I was watching footage of the fact that they had done it and they wanted me to comment. And I said, can we stop filming for a bit? And I explained to the producers why that shouldn't be in the show. And I said, I really don't want to comment on that because for X, Y, and Z. And the solution to that was when I saw the final cut, that segment of the show didn't include me. So
of course.
Just showed it anyway. But this is really, really not good.
So, do you know who Graham Bonnet is? Are you a rock and roll guy?
I am for Ozzy Osbourne's kind of my...
Okay, so Graham Bonnet, then you know who Graham Bonnet is. Graham Bonnet was the singer for a British band called Rainbow. That was the band for Ritchie Blackmore after Deep Purple broke up. So he starts his band Rainbow. And his first singer was Ronnie James Dio, right? You just brought up Ozzy Osbourne. Okay. So when Ronnie left the band, they bring in Graham Bonnet. Okay. So Graham gets the gig, records the album, and they're getting ready to play that Cat Nottingham, that big outdoor festival, you know, whatever, 300,000 people. And right before the gig, he's at his flat in London at night, and he sees in the mirror on the back half of the house somebody sitting in the rocking chair in his living room in the front of the house.
There's always a rocking chair, creepy.
Right? Well, this is Graham Bonnet, man.
Yeah.
And he's one of the greatest singers ever. And so he's on Fade to Black. He's a friend of mine, but he's on Fade to Black, and he tells us this story. And this is what happened in London. He sees the feet in the rocking chair, so he turns around and he walks into the living room, and it's James Dean. Okay. Sitting in the rocking chair with his short hair. Look, it's James Dean. And he talks to him, has a conversation. And he wakes up in the morning. James Dean is gone, by the way. And he had long hair. He goes to the barber, gets his hair cut like James Dean. And that's why Graham Bonnet has short hair. So he had these long locks, right? And he cut his hair off like James Dean, wears a suit, and shows up at Nottingham. And nobody in the band had seen him with short hair. And they're coming out to do the show, and Blackmore lost his mind. But the point is, he cut his hair off because of the conversation that he had in his flat with the ghost of James Dean. And this is one of the most rational, pragmatic people that I know. Great musician, one of the best voices on planet Earth, but that's his story. and it's never changed. Now? How do you pragmatically explain that one away?
There's a few like that I wrote for. We've got a magazine here called the Fortean Times. I also subscribe to. I've got a full set there of the American Fate magazine that started in 1948.
So good, so good.
It's good, isn't it? So it still comes out, but they used to do every month back in the day. And there's fantastic articles in there from all sorts, cryptozoology and parapsychologists, you name it. But for the Fortean Times, I did an article that was stealing a title from a book from Martin Eben a long time ago called They Knew the Unknown. And it was about various scientists and well-known people that had strange experiences. So it includes Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, and goes into people like Marie Curie and Abraham Lincoln and you name it. So I looked at modern day celebrities. So of course I included Ozzy Osbourne. He'd had a few strange experiences, including dreaming about the death of Princess Diana 2 weeks before it happened. And that's mentioned in his autobiography. During lockdown and COVID, I read a lot of biographies and autobiographies for people that I admire. And I realized that sometimes in these books, people would dedicate at least a paragraph to one strange experience that stuck with them throughout their life. So other people that came up, Barry Gibb of the Bee Gees, after Robin Gibb died, he saw him walk across his living room.
That's right.
Like through one door and out the other. And he said that was Robin. I saw him plain as day. Sting of the Police. He lives in an old house anyway, but he said he woke up one night and saw what he thought was his wife at the end of the bed, cradling their child. And he leaned over to look at his wife, and his wife's there asleep next to him. And he wakes her up, manages to wake her up, and he said, "Can you see that lady over there?" And they're both sat there looking at this woman sort of stood in the corner of the room, who I assume just fades out. And then through to Ed Sheeran. He was on Jonathan Ross's chat show saying that he got a place in London, but on the top floor is the guest room, and he doesn't ever go up there. He stayed up there before. Oh, I don't know if he'd stayed, but everyone that had been up and stayed said they'd woken up to see a really young girl stood at the end of the bed staring at them. And so they didn't want to stay there again, at least not in that room. And the cleaners didn't like going up there either. So Jonathan said, "Have you stayed up there?" And he said, "No, F that. I'm not going up there." So all these people throughout time, and these are just, we've talked about musicians, but this goes back a long way. Dr. Walter Franklin Prince did a really good book back in 1934, I think his was, called Noted Witnesses to Psychic Occurrences. And it was part of the argument from the outside skeptical community that, people only have paranormal experiences because they're uneducated and they don't know any better, or they're so religiously inclined. So he looked at groups of high court judges, police officers, scientists, artists, actors, you name it, from every walk of life and different ends of the educational spectrum and art spectrum. All of these people seem to have an experience when they're in the right place at the right time. So you cannot just group people and say they don't know any better, they're uneducated, and that's why they're having
right. Yeah, I think that's so important. I don't know if artists, creative people, whatever, that they have the ability to relax their mind and go into the zone, and create, whether it's writing or sculpting or music, whatever it can be, but they go to that certain place. And so they have the ability to do that. And that opens up perception to other realms.
You must get that with the guitars, right? When playing away, you must get certain elements where you're just lost in what you're doing.
I do. And I've had, bizarre, I don't know if you can hear this. Let me turn around. So one night, this is many years ago, it's probably 10 years ago, I finished the show, and one of the guitars on the wall strums. Okay? Okay. Yeah. So I'm sitting, and man, I peed a couple of times in my life on myself, and this was one of those times. So I'm sitting here, I wrap the show, I take the headphones off, I'm just like, pop this back, lean back, and then this happens. Just like that. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, what? And so I'm looking at did something fall on the guitar to strum the strings?
I was about to say, are you the kind of man that leaves a plectrum like between the strings like that, and it's
Nope.
just pinged out?
Yeah,
No.
yeah, I thought of all those things. And it's only happened that one time.
Right.
It's only happened that one time. But when you experience this stuff enough, it's not like I have the answers or anybody does, but it certainly shows me that there's something else to this reality that we don't understand. And I am going to chase this down and try to figure it out. Yeah, there's just something happening. I don't know the time of day. I mentioned earlier the hum with Tony Rathman and Cherie Rathman. They're both listening to the show tonight, by the way, and they are the best when it comes to this. And he has developed a lot of gear, and his latest project that he has developed, and I've heard it, seen it, works. He can do real-time, two-way spirit communication. Okay, real time. Just sit and talk and get a real-time answer on subject too. Not like, okay, so what is your name? Yes. No. What is your name? Bob Baumgardner. Get these real specific things. And so again, I don't have the answers to any of that, but I know that there's something going on that is beyond our world of measure and what we understand in this 2D existence, 3D, existence. I can't explain it. Like a guitar strumming or that creak. You mentioned time of day. Here, most of the action, is during the day. Yeah. The movement of stuff, the craziness, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen at night, because
and I'm not saying that there are things, but most of it.
I'm not saying that I'm saying with my own experience here, although it has slowed down, things still happen. But for the first 2 or 3 years in this house, it was insane. It was insane. It was all day long, something happening. And I live alone, and that's to have one of the, I get it. All right. One of the explanations is you forgot. You moved it there and you don't remember, or you made the phone call and you left a message, but you don't remember, whatever it is, right? No, this house is spotless. I have a very whacked out extreme disorder of cleanliness. Okay. I'm not a germaphobe, but my shit is in the right spot.
I can see from the guitars that everything has its place.
Dude, everything is correct. Okay. Yes. So when something is out of place, an out of place object, right? What do they call that? An OOP, out of place object. It's noticeable, and I don't freak out. I have did I save it or did I put it back? Hold on. I have it right here. Okay. Explain this to me.
Go on.
This is a Harley Davidson logo. It's thick. This is a keychain. Okay, but I cut the loop off on the top. And I got this on a keychain. I cut the top off because I was going to glue it to one of my helmets. I ride a Harley.
Honda Shadow for me. I can't afford the Harley.
Yeah, you can. So, I wanted to glue this on one of my helmets. So I cut it and I put it on my island in my kitchen. And it sits there in my spotlessly clean kitchen, sits on my island all by itself for 2 weeks. I come downstairs, I'm making my coffee, my French press, right? I walk past it and I look at it. Okay, today's the day I'm going to glue this on the helmet. After a couple of weeks, I walk in the kitchen in the morning to make my coffee, and it's gone.
Right.
It's not on my island where it had been sitting in the same spot for 2 weeks. It's gone. And I'm moving stuff around. I'm like, did it fall in the trash can? It's not here. Did I move it? Did I move it to the garage where I was going to put it on my workbench? And I'm thinking all of these things, trying to explain it away. About a week later, I had forgotten about it. Come downstairs to make my coffee in the morning, and it's sitting on my island right there. Now, nobody come at me and go, well, it was this. Bullshit. The thing moved, went somewhere, fairies, I don't know, and was placed back. Yeah.
There used to be accounts of that all the time in seance rooms, and certain psychics, mediums that were attributed to that. So one was Elena Zugan, who was known as the Romanian Devil Girl, that was studied by Harry Price. But in these day-to-day scenarios, there's a brilliant book called Jots, or Jot, Just One of Those Things is what it's summarized to. And it's written by...
I remember that.
Yeah, written by Mary Rose Barrington. She was a long-time member of the Society for Psychical Research. I adored her. She was a lovely lady. And she was a barrister, so a very highly trained solicitor. And her report writing was very akin to a barrister and very structured in her reports and how she delivered evidence. And I just liked listening to her talks. They'd always be written out and she'd just read them out, and you would get captivated by her voice. So that was towards the end of her life. She started writing up her interests and her experiences. So she wrote about her interest in psychical research, but Jots was one of her interests. So if anyone's interested in these experiences of the badge suddenly appearing when it was definitely not there in the first instance, some of you might have had it where you've got your keys and your phone ready to go out and you just put them on the side and you turn around, they're gone. You're looking, well, what? I just had it on the side, where on earth is it gone? You go all around the house and then all of a sudden it's in one of the back rooms resting on something completely different and you haven't been in there. And this is how people go about reporting it, or losing some keys and then weeks later they're in a sink in the bathroom upstairs. Where have they come from? So these are very interesting experiences when people report these.
Here's the other part. Let me ask you this directly. I feel that everybody on this planet at every level of life has experienced the crazy, but they put it in a box, put it on the shelf, and forget about it because life moves on.
And that's where we started with this whole interview. We started with, do people just move on from it? Do they go, oh, it's just one of those things? But this is that matchup between, are we appraising coincidence, right? Or do we even know that it's one of those things that I defined halfway through? I defined all these elements of parapsychology. If people know that these are of interest to parapsychology, then they are finally then going to go, oh, right, now I understand that is actually unique because Cal's said this is what parapsychology is interested in. Otherwise,
right.
Who do you call? Who do you talk to about it? What's anyone going to do about it anyway? You just deal with it and get on with it. You either revel
move on.
in how
you got to
weird
go
it
to work. You got to go to work. You got to pay the bills.
You revel in how weird it is and enjoy it, and so that is really unique. I will tell this university, this person, Lloyd Auerbach, Julian Mossbridge and Dean Radin and everyone else. I'll tell them because I know to. If you don't know to, you've just got to take it on.
That's right. It. Well, let's end with this. Let's end with some fun. I know that you have stared at the back of somebody's head until they turn around and look at you. I know you've done it.
Yeah, I have. I've done those studies.
Yeah, right. I enjoy doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now that has to be that Dean Radin, Julia Mossbridge kind of thing where we're entangling something in our minds and disturbing something enough that somebody knows that they're being looked at and they turn around and look at you.
So that would have to be that middle ground, that psychokinesis. So it's the idea that focused intent on the back of someone's head could be seen in a sort of an evolutionary theory as a threat detection. Someone is invading our space, but as a potential predator. You're walking.
Now you're explaining away the fun aspect.
No. There could still be a psi element to it because psi is, in theory, psi is activated to tell us there's a danger.
Sure.
Because staring at someone and knowing they're staring from the back of you is not a conventional thing. You've got eyes at the front, so you'd have to turn around and see them. Having an uncomfortable feeling and needing to turn around and look, where's that feeling come from? So are their eyes influencing the back of the head? That's the big question.
So what you're saying is we all have that psi ability. We just don't tap into it.
It could be potentially seen as it, and we're just not appraising that as psi, because otherwise, what are we actually reacting to? Why do we feel the need to actually scan our environment? You'll see it in a nature program. The gazelle's eating grass, and the lioness is somewhere else preying on that one gazelle out of many. And the gazelle then, like chomping away, looks up and goes left, right. Is it subtle smells in the air that they're picking up on that the lioness is getting close, even though they know to hunt down wind and so forth? Or is it that early detection of something's not right? And that something is not right is I'm being stared at with the intent of something that is not good. And that could be, like with humans, because of a potential attacker or someone that wants to take something off of you and a number of other things. It's usually not a good intent. It could be a positive reaction as well, where someone's just very attracted to you and they can't help but look at you and you get that feeling because, again, it's still someone invading your space because there's an intense stare on you as well.
Next time you're over in the States, I'll show you a ghost.
Oh, please do.
Yeah, guaranteed. I'll show you a UFO for sure.
Oh, please do. I'll be back that way at some point. Last time I was in LA was 2019 because I was with Scott Rogo's dad. But then I went up to Scott's archive, which is in San Francisco. But I need to come back to LA. I'm forever going over to Vegas, and I was there in August. And I haven't been to the East Coast in a long while. I need to go back over to.
Well, if you make it out here, seriously, I'll make that happen for you. And also, I will be in Scotland in August.
Your Monty Python tour.
Yeah, going to be Scotland in August. So, man, if you got the time, I may spend a couple of days in London before I head up to Scotland, and then come back to London and spend a couple of more days. I got to go do. I want to go to Stonehenge and I want to go to Avebury. I want to get those two things out of the way. So I don't know if I'm going to do that before or after Scotland, but I'll be around. So we'll have to go through the group.
We'll book something in and I'll find you at some point on your tour and we'll grab some lunch or something. But don't go to Camelot. It's a silly place.
We're going to the Bridge of Death. Going to the Bridge of Death. Going to the Bridge of Death. Where can everybody follow all of your work, Callum?
Variety of places. If your Facebook users, I'm just down as Cal Cooper. It's not even a fan page. It's just a standard profile, but I just publish about work and what I'm doing. So Cal Cooper on there. Instagram and X, it's Callum E. Cooper. You'll find me on TikTok under Dr. Callum Cooper, I think what is my TikTok thing that you've got me thinking now? And yet people keep finding it. Oh, that's gone straight into something. TikTok is at Dr. Cal Cooper. Dr. Cal Cooper on TikTok. And then my website is callumecooper.com as well.
Yeah.
And Amazon, same name, you will find my books, such as my original Telephone Calls from the Dead. There's other books I've contributed to, but the most recent was Getting This Finally Back Out There. 1979. Finally, I've typed it all back out again from scratch to correct various errors that I knew about, refine some of it. And then there's an extended postscript by me to say what's happened 45 years on from this and what's going on with the actual studies. So those two books work really well together because it's one study and then another study, and then the postscript brings us up to date as well. So all of those outlets. Follow me, get in touch, send me an email with any questions and stuff if I can help with anything from education to you want to share a strange experience and things like that. Go ahead.
Enjoy the rest of your day, man. Great conversation. And I look forward to our next one. Thank you so much, Cal.
My pleasure. Good speaking to you.
Have a great night. Great day, I should say. Cal Cooper, and his links are below. It is CallumECooper.com. Those are below. All simple to do. I want to remind everybody that tomorrow on the show, Nicola Farmer is with us, and we're going to be talking an extension of tonight's show, the ICU Academy. All right, so that will be tomorrow night. I want to thank Cal. Perfect show, perfect conversation. So much fun. Great way to start the week. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black, and you know what I've got, and that is Go Backley Tappy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go Backley Tappy.